Hi BookTube, my name is Juan, I am just one reader, and welcome back to another evening of book reviewing. So tonight I will be covering books numbers 8 through 11 that I have read so far in 2019. And those are Bel Canto by Anne Patchett, The Shadow in the North by Philip Pullman, Foe by Ian Reid, and Kiss of the Spider-Woman by Manuel Puig. Keep in mind that, as always, my reviews will be completely spoiler-free, as my only objective with these reviews is to talk about them and give you guys enough information about the book so that you could decide if you want to read them or maybe you should skip them, and also to let you know about what I thought and what I felt towards them and to give you my score. But that's pretty much it. So having said that, let's begin. Bel Canto by Anne Patchett is a literary fiction novel. It is set in a non-named South American country and it takes place at a dinner party. It's a very fancy dinner party with a lot of politicians and business people. And the main highlight of this event is that a very important opera singer is singing at this party. Then, of course, there's a twist, and this is not really a spoiler at all because it happens right away at the beginning of the novel. It's the spark that ignites the plot, that gets the plot going, is that while they are at this party, there's a terrorist attack, and this becomes a sort of hostage kind of novel. The people who are in this party become hostages to the terrorists, and then things start to develop and things don't exactly go in the direction that either the hostages or the terrorists were expecting. So the result is that this is a novel that is very much focused on the characters, the people who are locked inside this manor house in South America in this very complicated, very horrible situation with a lot of stress. It's a very dire circumstance, and what we follow mostly are the relationships between these characters, and a lot of unexpected things happen between these characters. There's a lot of power dynamics because we are in a situation of, where people are exerting control over the others. We have a hostage terrorist kind of situation, but things get more complex than that. And that's all I'm gonna say about the plot. I really did not like this novel, and believe me when I say that I really, really, really wanted to get on board with it. This novel features many things that I really like. As I said, it is literary fiction. The language is supposed to be very beautiful. It's a character-driven novel, which is something that I really, really enjoy. And on top of everything else, it is a novel that has a lot to do with singing and music, and in particular, opera. There's a lot of description of music, musical and operatic technique. There's a lot of references to opera, to singers, to composers, the whole thing. So you would think that a big opera buff such as myself would really like a book such as this one, and I really wanted to. I really, really did. And yet, oh man, this was such a letdown. Don't get me wrong either, this is not the worst book I've read in my life. It was just such a big disappointment because I was really expecting to love it because, as I just mentioned, this book on paper had ticked all the right boxes for me, but in execution, this book was a mess. First of all, I thought everything was ridiculous. Everything was so convenient for the story, so contrived. I found everything so outrageously ridiculous and unrealistic to the point of I was not buying it. And of course, it's fiction, it's a novel, so there's some suspension of disbelief required, right? But this just went completely over the line. So I never bought, I never really believed that anything was happening. I never believed what the characters were doing or saying. Everything felt so unbelievable. I also didn't really identified or cared about any of the characters. I thought they were very one-dimensional, and that was very, very disappointing for a novel that claims to be so character-focused. And yes, it is very character-focused because there's not a lot of plot, and we do follow these characters very slowly, and yet I felt very distant from them, and I felt they were very much like representations or representatives of ideas that the author wanted to represent, but they never felt like real characters or real people to me, at least. My other big letdown here was the writing style, and this is probably the most shocking disappointment of all because I was really expecting to enjoy Anne Patchett's writing. This was my first Anne Patchett, and it's probably gonna be my last. And so I didn't really know what to expect from her in terms of writing style, but I had heard a lot of great things, so I was expecting to at least like it. But oh man, the writing style, I thought it was awful. It was so beautiful to the point that it also became unbelievable. It also became gimmicky and sort of, it had like this sugary veneer that felt even tacky to me. I felt like this book was trying to be so elegant and sophisticated, but it became tacky and kitschy and false to me. This is just my subjective perception, my opinion. And on top of everything else, I was really expecting to at least like the references to opera, music, singing, technique, all of that. And I really didn't think that was very well handled. Sure, there are a lot of references to opera and composers and the feelings, the physical sensations that people experience with music and the emotional experiences that music can give you, that's all here. But I never bought it. It never felt genuine to me. It felt like the author really wanted me to get what she was saying, but I felt like the author never allowed me to just enter the book and actually experience it. I feel like this book was very heavy-handed in the way that the author was putting everything so much in your face, in the reader's face. And yeah, I would not recommend this book. I thought it was just such a big letdown for me. I gave it 2 stars, 2 out of 5 stars, and from 1 to 10, I would probably give it somewhere between a 4 and a 5. Next up, we have The Shadow in the North, the second book in the Sally Lockhart Mysteries series, which is a series of young adult thrillers by Philip Pullman. And this one is very similarly structured to the first one, The Ruby and the Smoke, which I really enjoyed. Basically, we have a series of characters, and every character has like a different narrative thread, and we follow each and every one of them, so it feels like we are putting a puzzle together, and eventually everything comes together. But I think this book was not as successful as the first one was. I really enjoyed the first one, The Ruby and the Smoke. I thought it was very clever, and even though I did find it very convenient and contrived, particularly in terms of the resolution of the mystery, I was very satisfied with the book overall. Here with The Shadow in the North, I am not so sure. There were parts of this book, elements of this book that I really enjoyed, like the setting, the different characters that we follow are very interesting. There's this very strange magician that is always making you think about why he's behaving the way that he does. He's a very interesting character. There are some scenes and some thematical elements in this book that I thought were really cool and really fun to really cool to explore and to watch. Like there's a very esoteric element here with this seances that people attended and this whole idea of coming into contact with the dead. So there are certain elements of the book that I really enjoyed. However, the mystery itself, which is really the heart, the core of the book, I thought that mystery was not compelling. I was never really invested in that part of the book, and I was just not intrigued as I was with the first book. Also, the villain, I never really cared or felt anything about the villain. And my biggest complaint would be I don't want to spoil it, but there are many things that happen towards the climax and the ending of this book that become like a soap opera. They become so far-fetched and so melodramatic and so unbelievable. And I mean, I was laughing at certain points at the ending of this book. It was like a soap opera. So I really didn't like this one very much. I think I gave it 3 stars because, I couldn't give this novel less than 3 stars just because it is very well written and the characters are very warm and wholesome, and I love them. I love Sally and her comrades. I love these characters and I love the setting and I love Philip Pullman's writing. But in terms of the plot, the story, the villain, all of that, it really fell apart. So I gave it 3 stars out of 5. And from 1 to 10, I would probably give it a 7 or maybe a 6.5. Next up, we have Foe by Canadian author Ian Reid. This is a book that I picked up thanks to Richard from another book vlog. He recommended this very highly, and I am very, very thankful because I really loved this book. It might be one of my favorites so far this year. So, to put it very simply, Foe tells the story of this marriage. We have this man and wife. They are living somewhere in America, or at least that's what it felt like to me, but it's never really specified, the setting or the context. But they live in a very isolated farm, as you can tell from the cover, which is a very beautiful cover. They are living their life very routinely, very monotonously, very isolated in this farm until one day, and this is the opening of the book, a stranger comes along with a proposition, a kind of offer, and from that point onward, we get this very strange dynamic between the two main characters and also this third stranger who comes to disrupt the peace. There is a little bit of a science fiction element here, but I don't think you should see or think about this novel as a sci-fi novel. It is a literary fiction novel that uses certain sci-fi elements and certain elements of technology in particular to really question and problematize certain issues about marriage and intimacy and stuff like that. So it is very literary. I would compare the tone and the aesthetic and the feeling of this book to the movie Arrival. by Denis Villeneuve, that wonderful movie with Amy Adams. This felt very much to me like that did. Very literary, but with a lot of sci-fi elements thrown in there. I loved this book. It was absolutely perfect in terms of the writing. The writing is very, very sparse and very precise, and it's very minimalistic, but it does have certain it plays a little bit, and you have to pay attention to certain things because there are things in the language that, because the language seems so understated and minimalistic, maybe you would not feel or think that you have to pay attention to it, but you actually do, because there's a lot in the way that the language is structured. So I really liked that it was deceivingly simple, the writing. I really liked, as I said, the tone. It was a kind of creepy, uneasy, disturbing, slightly disturbing, melancholy feel that the novel has, and you never really know what's going on underneath. You never know why you are feeling so weird. Why, I don't know. If you have seen the movie Arrival, that's pretty much how I felt reading this book. Like, ugh, I don't know why, but there's this melancholy creepiness going on. Um, I really liked how this book explored the dynamics between these characters. I thought thematically this book is so relevant, and the issues that this book questions and talks about are very timely and very relevant. And the way that the book addresses these issues is very creative and very fresh. I also enjoyed this book because it is very short and very fast. It became addictive, and the writing is so fast, and the chapters are very short, so you are always compelled to turn the page, and it was an amazing reading experience. My only problem, which is not really a problem, that I had with this book was that it was predictable. It's a book that is supposed to have a very shocking revelation at the end, but if you have seen movies like Arrival or Ex Machina, which is another movie that I would compare this book to in terms of tone and feel, and the tone, the vibe. If you have seen those kinds of uses of sci-fi, you probably will guess the ending to Foe. That's what I did. I totally predicted it. But I don't really see it as a negative, because even though I predicted the whole thing, I was still able to enjoy it. So that doesn't really matter. It's not so much of a mystery thriller. It's not about the revelation, even though if you don't see the revelation coming, it will be very shocking and very satisfying to you. So I don't know. But to me, because I did see it coming, I didn't mind, and it's not really about that. It's more about what that implies in terms of these characters. So overall, I really, really loved this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and from 1 to 10, I gave it 8.5. And finally, the last book that I finished was Kiss of the Spider Woman by Manuel Puig. This was written originally in Spanish, and I read it in the original Spanish, El beso de la mujer araña. This is set in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, inside a prison, and we follow the interactions between two inmates at the prison. We follow their conversations, what they talk about, they tell each other stories, they talk about movies, and we start learning more about them just as they start learning more about themselves, and they start getting to know one another better. This book left me a little bit cold, I have to say. I didn't really know what to expect going in, and I think that was good. It's always good to approach a book like this with a blank slate. But I guess I was sort of expecting something a little bit more dramatic. Maybe it's because I know this book has been adapted to film and to stage. There's a musical out there. So I don't know. When I started reading this book, I started to wonder how could they adapt this. I haven't seen any of the adaptations, so I couldn't really talk about them. But reading the book made me wonder, huh, this is a weird book to adapt. But well, that's not really for my review. So, what I really liked about this book was the way it is written, which is mostly or entirely through dialogue. We follow what these characters are speaking, what they are saying to one another, and it is through the dialogue that we get to imagine their world, the world that they inhabit, and also their past experiences, where they come from, and we also get to see their inner world. So I really liked the use of language, the way in which the narrative is sort of experimental, but there were some other things that I didn't really like about this book. I felt that the rhythm of the narrative was sort of jagged because there were moments in which the narrative was very fast-paced and very smooth and relentless, and then everything came to a halt and things stopped and it felt very dense and academic and boring and informative. This is mainly because there's a lot of footnotes and things that sort of interrupt what is actually going on in terms of the story. Um, and finally, I guess I liked the book okay, but it was nothing special. It was nothing revelatory for me. I liked it all right. I am giving it 3 out of 5 stars. And from 1 to 10, I guess, I don't know, I would give it maybe like a 7, maybe 7.5, because it it did do some things in an experimental, different way. And I also liked the way that the book talks about homosexuality, which is something that I thought was interesting. So I have actually posted my own in-depth review of the book, and I center my review around homosexuality. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can go and check out that review. That's it. Thanks for joining me here with another evening of book reviewing. I am just one reader, and I will see you on the next video.